turn their mics on. Now it's working. No mic issues. We're knocking on wood. Good stuff.
You ready, John?
Yep.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Health and Human Services Committee. We can call the meeting to order at 10:30 on August 25th. Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Legislator Block.
Here.
Legislator Denton.
Here.
Legislator Kelly.
Here.
Legislator Burtis.
Here.
Chair Romeo.
Here. First order of business is approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any objections to the previous minutes? No? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. On our agenda today, we have a couple of guests that are going to be presenting on their departments. And first up, we have Renee Ho from Forensic Labs. Oh, and Dr. Anderson, but if you can introduce yourselves when you come up, appreciate it. We know the mics are a weird thing, but if you can speak into the mic when you speak, please.
That's fine. Morning, everybody. Katie Anderson, Commissioner of the Health Department, and I'm joined here today by Renee Ho, who is our Director for the Center of Forensic Sciences.
Good morning. Legislative members, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me share about our amazing division this morning. Good seeing some of you again. My name is Renee Ho, and I am the Director of Laboratories at the Onondaga County Center for Forensic Sciences. The division is under the Health Department, and my division has 5 sections, but we provide 6 different services, otherwise known as disciplines in forensic science. We have a total staff of 36, 37, including myself, and they are split between the latent print section, the firearms section, the drug chemistry section, which provides the services of fire debris analysis as well as controlled substances, the digital evidence examination section, as well as the forensic biology and DNA section. So 5 sections, 6 disciplines. I'll go top down, and for the oldest sections and disciplines that we have at the laboratory, they came along about 26 years ago, and that would be the drug chemistry section that provides the controlled substances and fire debris analysis. Over there, it is supervised by Samuel Van D, who came along over 20 years ago with 5 years of experience as a drug chemist. He is very knowledgeable, and he supervises 4 forensic chemists over there. Last year alone, this section processed over 220 items, and about 142 of those contained fentanyl in there. This includes about 10,000 to 15,000 exhibit or individual items. Routinely, year over year, we receive in this section alone approximately 400 cases incoming, which comprises of about 1,500 individual items. On top of that, the section has to inventory every single item in there, so every pill, every packet. And last year, we had about 43,000 of these items that they had to count. There's no magic counter, there's no robotics involved. It is all humans having to count 43,000 items. It is phenomenal. They performed over 8,500 examinations of these items because we have to verify and confirm that the first test and the second tests are coming back to the same results. We're not just doing a single exam on a single item. We provide services to over 20 law enforcement agencies and the district attorney's office here in the county. We currently do not provide services to out-of-county agencies yet. We used to at some point, but we currently have a backlog, and we're going to catch up on that. And once we do, then we can open up additional services. In this section, there is a member of the chemistry unit, along with Sam, who are qualified and competent at performing fire debris analysis. Year over year, on average, we get about 20 of these cases, and that would be any fire investigations that come to the laboratory for examinations. Moving on to the firearms section. This section is supervised by Justine Cresso, who has been with the lab for over 20 years as well. She supervises 1 firearms technician and 5 firearms examiners. At current, 2 of the firearms examiners are still in training, so we are running at about 60% capacity in terms of firearms examiners. The firearms examiners provide services in serial number restoration. So any firearms and items that are defaced, we will try to recover the serial number from them using physical and chemical methods. We also perform firearms comparisons to determine, cartridge case comparisons to determine which firearms may have fired the cartridge cases that are recovered from scenes of crime. And we perform NIBIN examinations, test firings, and operability. So operability part of it is more critical in nature because of the short turnaround time. There is a law in New York State that mandates, if it is utilized, that the turnaround time for an operability, to determine the operability of a firearm be under 144 hours so that the individual may be brought to the grand jury for arraignment. And last year alone, we did about 300 operability reports. So if you're averaging that, at least one a day on average, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. And we had over 380 NIBIN leads. So that is using the database that correlates the images of the cartridge cases that we enter into the system. And we have a good chunk of numerous states in the region that we are searching against. So over 381 leads. This is just coming out of all of the entries that are made. Last year, we had 933 requests for services, and we were able to complete 789 of them. So that is a similar pattern across all the disciplines and sections, is the amount coming in is greater than the amount going out. But that bridge, that gap is closing for us. Of the 930 requests for service, there comes along 2,400 items on average. So it's not just one gun per case. It could be one gun, a magazine, and several or 50, however many cartridge cases that are submitted. And we look at every single one of them for similarities to group them for NIBIN entry and for examinations. The true trainees that we have currently, they're new positions that were awarded to us by the county in 2022. And they were hired about a year or so ago. So they've got another 2 years to go in training. Firearms examiners undergo extensive training in order to get signed off. So after college, if they've not worked at any other forensic laboratory before, joining a forensic laboratory, their training period is anywhere from 2 to 3 years. And a lot of that is microscopic examinations and practice and training their eyes so that they can find patterns microscopically relatively quickly. For me, if you put me behind a scope, I could be there for days and I'd never be able to find anything for you. It's just lack of practice, lack of training. And then the last section that is one of the oldest sections is latent print examination. Latent print is one of the oldest forensic sciences in forensic science. And last year we had about 1,000 service requests. That includes requests for processing physical items like a mug or a bottle, a firearm, etc. A physical item that we cannot see or determine whether or not there's any prints on there. That item comes to us and we utilize physical and chemical methods to try to make those apparent. And these service requests also include latent lift cards. So that would be the law enforcement agency having processed, let's just say, the handle of a vehicle. And then they lifted that print and they put it on a card, and that card is what comes to us. So there's no processing, but we would evaluate and examine that card for the friction ridge detail that is submitted to us. We were able to complete about 850 of the 1,000 that came in. Approximately, we performed 19,000 comparisons in that section. So that's just one pair of friction ridge against another. That's 19,000 of them. Over 6,400 samples. Thinking about the 19,000 comparisons we had to do, this is just out of the 1,900 friction ridge details that we were able to find. Not everything that comes in has friction ridge detail, and not every friction ridge detail that we see is actually usable for comparison. So we were only able to recover and utilize and compare 1,900 of those. We entered 700 prints into SAFES, which is the database that the latent print examiners use to correlate against other cases in the state to see if there's any other similarities between the friction ridge that was discovered from one crime scene object item evidence to another discovered from another scene, whether locally or other parts of the state as well. And 120 hits were generated from SAFES. And we're only talking about those in New York State. We also have the capability to utilize the FBI database for searching. We're looking into expanding our searches if they don't come up locally or in the state, that we would enter those into the FBI database as well. The section is staffed with 8 technical individuals. That includes this supervisor, Molly Corvo, and currently about 2 of those individuals are in training. The training process and program for latent print examiners is about 18 to 24 months, so about 2 years if they come with no experience at all. If they come with experience, just like any other discipline, they would be abbreviated and shortened because they already come with that technical knowledge and the forensic background and policies and procedures and know-hows and what to do. Then we move to the next oldest discipline, which is that was brought over by that we actually created back in the early 2000s, 1999 to 2000, which is the forensic biology and DNA section. It is forensic biology and DNA because the biology part of it is doing body fluid identification. The bodily fluids that we try to identify and screen for are saliva, seminal fluid, and blood. We don't do any other ones. So we try to identify those. And then we also do DNA analysis on the stains and on samples that are submitted to us that potentially may contain DNA material. Sometimes the evidence comes to us as a physical item, like a cup and a bottle or a firearm, and we would have to swab those and look for stains on them. Using training and experience, we have a general idea of where best to swab. Not every surface is conducive to DNA, so we're going to focus our attention to the areas that are. And then those swabs and samples and cuttings, whether they are from sexual assault kits or from mugs, bottles, and firearms, those go forward for DNA analysis. Our laboratory is equipped and competent in providing DNA analysis for nuclear STRs as well as YSTRs. So the nuclear STR is the DNA that is found in most parts of the body, not red blood cells, but they're in your hair roots, they're in your skin, liver tissue, blood, seminal fluid, buccal swabs. That's what the nuclear DNA analysis would be able to help us identify. And then we also perform YSTR analysis. Now, those would only be done for samples that potentially have male DNA, because it's for Y, the Y chromosome. And that is typically most commonly used for sexual assault cases. Those are the technologies that we use. And we also perform CODIS examinations, CODIS entries as well. And last year in the DNA section, we had almost 800 service requests. And in those 800 service requests, there was about 1,200 items. We were able to complete just a little bit over 500 of those service requests and entered 83 profiles into CODIS. Now, on average, year over year, we have about 70 hits. It's not directly correlated. It's not 73 hits out of the 83 entries. It is just 83 entries and then 70 or so hits year over year. CODIS, our CODIS is local, which means it's only samples in Onondaga County. Only eligible profiles would move up to the state level, so we try to screen for those and upload them to the state level so they can be compared against other DNA profiles that are submitted by other jurisdictions in New York State, including the state police. Now, the New York State level, which is not anything we have control over, they then further screen those profiles to determine their eligibility to move up to the federal level for national searching. So we have databases that we are enrolled into using with the ATF, that's NIBIN, with SAFUS and NGI, that would be for the latent print folks, and then CODIS with the FBI folks. Finally, our newest discipline and section that we have added into the laboratory, we just celebrated the 20th year with the forensic laboratory, is digital evidence. We are one of 2 digital evidence disciplines in the state that is accredited, and we are fully civilian. A lot of the digital evidence examinations are still performed by law enforcement sworn investigators, probably for good reason because of the investigative aspect to it. As a forensic laboratory and a forensic service provider, we are not into the investigatory element of the criminal justice process. We are very much neutral, objective party. We analyze the evidence, we speak to the evidence, and that's pretty much where it ends. Our digital evidence section is staffed by 3 digital evidence examiners. One of them is currently in training and hopefully will be signed off soon. We received about 150 service requests last year, and we're able to finish 120 service requests in that same period of time. Last year alone, we extracted 12 terabytes of data. So that's 12,000 gigabytes. Think about how big your phone is in gigabytes, divide that into 12,000, that's how many approximately on average digital devices. We process cell phones the most, but we also do laptops, hard drives, and other computer storage devices as well. And that's pretty much it for what forensic does.
That's all?
That's it. It's 30 amazing technical staff that do all this work, and they are highly qualified. Almost all of them have a master's degree. Every single one of them have a bachelor's degree before they come and walk in through the door. They all go through our training program, our quality assurance program. They are vetted and re-vetted by the accreditation body, which visits us every other year, and every 4 years they do a full reassessment of the lab, including the personnel and the training program. So this laboratory has never had any issues on that front. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Questions from legislators?
Yeah, I know one thing that we've seen some changes in over recent years is discovery laws in New York State. How have we been able as a county to navigate those changes and make sure that we're able to keep up with the criminal justice system to make sure that, we're investing in our public safety?
Thank you very much for that question. So the discovery law came about, I think, at the end of 2020. Or 2021, and along with the medical examiner's office, we were very fortunate that we brought that law to the members of the legislation and explained what kind of impact that would have to the laboratory and the medical examiner's office but when this law came into effect, in terms of the turnaround time and being able to provide the exponential increased volume of discovery materials. We were very fortunate and thankful that the members of the legislation approved each of us to have a forensic records coordinator. So I have a forensic records coordinator on staff whose primary responsibility is to address all the discovery requests that come in through the door. So she is part of a discovery team, and they receive emails advising them that, hey, here is a portal for you to drop records into. Please collect A, B, C, and D, and we would do that. Most of the requests are coming in from the district attorney's office. We do receive discovery requests from other law firms and agencies. They just need to provide it to us in writing in some way, shape, or form for us to provide that material as well. Over the last 5 years, we've also worked really hard at becoming a paperless laboratory. So our laboratory information management system has helped facilitate almost all of our old paper records that we would take notes on into a paperless platform. So that we're able to better facilitate and transfer that information without the scanning, without the what did you write, I cannot read your writing issues. We've also been fortunate enough to have a quality management system, which is a software that allows us to log, track, and document our quality management processes quality controls and quality assurance records. So that is also all electronic and much easier to provide access to, whether they are auditors, assessors, or for discovery materials and requests.
And you referenced the backlog. I'm not sure if that was specifically in reference to I think it was the drug chemistry aspect. What's the rate limiter in that discipline? And is there a need to expand beyond, servicing exclusively the county? Would that be a potential, revenue generator if we had either the staff or the equipment, or what's grinding the gears on that particular program?
I think that we are very fortunate that every single position that is on the manning table for the forensic laboratory is occupied by an individual. So we're blessed to be funded and authorized to have those individuals on staff. In looking at the crime trends in my career, unfortunately, there's no way to forecast any of these. The crime rates kind of go like the stock market, if you will. It's not really predictable. Nobody, for example, could have predicted what COVID did to the backlog across the nation. We couldn't. Before COVID, our NIBIN and firearms section did not have a backlog with NIBIN entries, but during and after COVID, we had to crawl out of approximately an 800 service request backlog for NIBIN. It took us 2 to 3 years to get out of that from the 2 core COVID years. That was not predictable. There's reports and statistics that are coming out of the Department of Labor, Bureau of Justice and Statistics, that crime rate seems to have slowed down last year in 2024 and 2025, but just like the stock market, things go up, things go down. So it's very a difficult question to answer. The only thing that we can do as a forensic service provider is try to get ahead of the game with the information that we have and the resources that we have as well, and try to continue to improve our processes and with the technologies that we have.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll add on to that as well, and thank you for your presentation, Renee, and taking your time out to be here. So one thing that I imagine came clear in Director Ho's presentation is that these are highly technical positions that take a really long time for folks to be trained and operational, a couple years for most of them. So there's been steady progress in the years since Director Ho has been in her position in reducing backlog, but some of that is contingent on being fully staffed to the point where everyone is ready to run and process things at full pace. The other thing, I don't know if you're able to comment, in a couple of the different sections, which I know is standard, not just for our lab, but elsewhere, you receive a certain number of items and you process typically less than that, but there's a prioritization process that goes on in collaboration with law enforcement, right? In terms of triage and making sure you're processing what needs to be processed.
Absolutely. So I'll use biology as an example. For the sexual assault kits that we outsource, we have been outsourcing quite a few sexual assault kits. I think in the laboratory physically right now, there's probably 5 kits, and they're the newest kits that were submitted to us. All the other ones have either been done or have been outsourced, and they're being worked on right now. When we outsource kits to another laboratory to help us with the backlog, the contract with them is which are the 2 samples in that whole kit, and that may have 5 or 6 that are most likely to generate a profile that we could use, that the law enforcement agencies could use for investigatory purposes, and they start there. Now, if they don't get anything in those first 2, then we start going down and do some more. That is always an option, and that's a similar pattern that our laboratory exercises and applies for other types of cases, such as homicides, assaults, robberies, and nonviolent crimes as well. Oftentimes, we do get a lot more evidence than we're able to handle. Let's just say there was a burglary in a home. The officers do not know, because the perpetrator has left the premises, what they may have touched. Only things that look disturbed. So a lot of things get swabbed: handles, surfaces, counters, objects, TV screens, cords. We do not have the capacity. If we processed all of those, we would never be able to even imagine catching up. Sure. So we would have conversations and discussions with the law enforcement detectives and ask them, which ones do you think we should work on first? pick your top 2 or your top 3, and we'll go start from there. And typically for a lot of the nonviolent crimes, that is our first go-to. For the more violent crimes, the volume is higher. Homicides, assaults, sexual assaults, we will work a lot more of those. Generally, they have a lot more items of evidence, and because of the violent nature of them, there tends to be some body fluids left behind, and we will focus on those as well because there's a higher chance of getting something.
Sure.
Great. Legislator Burtis.
Thank you. Hi, Commissioner. Hi, Director. Thank you for being here again. It's nice to see you both. It's been some time. Some time has passed since I've been over there, but could you talk a little bit about the physical condition of the building, the office, where you're at? How is that? Where are we at with that?
But the physical location of the building is really close to the emergency room at Upstate. It is sandwiched between Adams and Harrison Street. It is occupied by us, all of my sections. Some laboratories have satellite locations. We do not. We are all together in one building. We share the building and facility with the toxicology section and the medical examiner's office. And there's 4 floors to it, including the basement. Inside it, we have the the firing range, which houses a pretty large tank and a very long range, and all of the electronic equipment. We also have a generator that's outside. Now, unlike most generators that keep the HVAC and the lights on, our generators actually are supposed to keep the refrigerators and the freezers going, all the equipment running, so in the case of a power outage, they don't go on the fritz. The problem with that, if they're not on the generator and they go on the fritz, that's $150,000 or $1 million, depending on which piece of equipment we're talking about. So we're very lucky to have all the equipment that we have, air conditioning units present inside to help keep them cool. Because they generate a lot of heat. It's amazing. They don't look like much, and you can't really feel them, but they generate a lot of heat, and the components that are inside them need to stay cool. It is a 26-year-old building, and it, like everybody's home, there are parts that need to be replaced after a certain number of years, like the roof and the furnace and the water heater, etc. This building is no different. There are parts that are due. Just like a home. And we are very lucky that the county has been able to give us a dedicated buildings maintenance supervisor whose primary responsibility is to keep our building functioning. Whether it is raining, snowing, or 120 degrees outside, their job is to make sure that inside it is climate controlled. Static is controlled because we're working with drugs and powders and electronic equipment that does not like any of the static. So humidity controlled. We cannot sweat because we are working with evidence. We do not want to contaminate them. So it also needs to be climate controlled for the staff as well. They do work really hard at maintaining that. We have 24 hours security folks, so there's always somebody in the building to know if something happened and call the steam station, whether it's 3 a.m. at night or ring me up and I'll ring somebody up to come help. So just like an old house.
Weren't there renovations going on when we were there for the...
Yes, there was.
What's the status of those?
Those have all been completed, yes. Okay. So if you come by again, you'd be able to see it without any construction materials.
Yeah.
So recently, we were awarded a $2.5 million renovations capital improvement project for the firearms and the latent prints section. And we also built out a wellness room, or AKA a mother's room, which the building did not have before. Remember, this was built in the late 1990s, so that we didn't have one of those, and now we do. So the latent print section has been remodeled, and it is at max efficiency. It was designed to be such. Engineering geniuses can happen, but we cannot foresee it to be any more efficient than it already is. And the same things with the firearms section. Every firearms examiner has their own workstation, their own hoods to process serial number restoration, because we use acids to etch, acid etching. And they also have their own comparison microscopes. It is not conducive to sharing, unfortunately. It can't, like, hey, can I bump you off so I can get on there? Well, I got my cartridge cases all stuck on there. If I remove it, I gotta start all over again. So it's very beneficial and helpful that they all have their own piece of equipment to do that. Yep.
Great, thank you. Other questions, comments? No? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So the budget season's coming up, so I'm just curious. So with this Center for Forensic Science, is this like built into the health department budget? That's where we would find all that. And then also, I know that this is also listed in the city abstract. Could you, I don't know if anyone could explain that kind of issue, like with, I know in the budget process, the city has this abstract, and one of the services listed is the forensic sciences. I don't know if, yeah, that's okay if you can't.
I'm sure about that. I can look into it and get back to you.
Thank you.
Do you know, Renee?
The only thing that we put in for this budget season that is a single-time cost would be what we call FRED, for short, the Forensic Recovery Evidence Devices, and they are for the digital evidence section. So all of the equipment that we have, whether they are the gas chromatographs, mass spectrometers in drug chemistry, or the genetic analyzer or thermocycler in biology, now we're talking about the FREDs in digital evidence, they all have a lifespan, a period of time in which the service provider is willing to continue to provide maintenance and services for. And when you reach the end of that time frame, the service provider or the vendor that we purchase it from, okay, we're moving on to the next great thing. We are no longer providing service to this antiquated old model. And so the FREDs are one of those right now. They're reaching their end of life. We are seeing that they are also aging out based on their performance. Sometimes we can see that based off of speed. Sometimes we can see that based on the quality of the results that they're coming out with, or the frequency in which we have to provide maintenance and services to them. So for the gas chromatograph and mass spectrometer that we got last year, it was to replace an older one. That older one, we were constantly replacing parts. And that was basically it was constantly down for regular intervals, so we wouldn't be able to use them. So we replaced it with a new one, and this one is performing a whole lot better. With every piece of equipment that we do procure and purchase, whether it is the same model, make and model, which often it is not, because vendors and businesses like to get newer models, kind of like vehicles and phones. You get a new model every year. We have to go through a validation process with every single piece to make sure that it is fit for purpose, that it is not a lemon, that what we bought, because they make them to order. They don't come off an assembly line like cereal does. So every unit that is purchased, if you will, is unique. So that's why we have to validate every single one of them to make sure that it's performing adequately. And if there's any specs that are different, then we can either choose to accept them and modify our procedures to meet some of those specs so that it gives us the quality that we desire, or we could return them to the vendor and ask them for a better one.
Sort of follow up on that, yeah. So any budget requests related to the lab would fall under the health department budget. And then with respect to the city listing, I'm not quite sure, but I'll look into that
Okay.
and get back to you.
Thank you. And is there any like state or federal funding involved here? Or is it purely county?
So we do have grants
Okay.
that we are funded by. The DNA section has been a recipient of the Capacity Enhancement Backlog Reduction Grant for probably 20 years now. The amount fluctuates year to year, but that is a federal grant that is awarded by the Bureau of Justice Assistance. We also receive a state grant from New York State. That is the Aid to Localities grant, and we've been a recipient of that also for probably about 15 to 20 years. That amount also fluctuates from year to year. And then we would apply for, along with the state, the Coverdell grant for forensic improvement. And that amount also fluctuates year to year as well. Total, annually, I would say about $1 million in total. Yeah.
For grants.
Yes,
Okay.
that from grants. Yeah, between the Coverdell, the DNA grant, and the Aid to Localities state grant, about $1 million. Just shy of. So yeah, we continue to apply for those. Actually, thank you for bringing that up. We applied for a new grant this year that was newly released. It's never been released before. It is a $300,000 grant for the NIBIN program. Our NIBIN program has already been established, and that was established with and through the ATF many, many years ago. It is going forward, starting in 2027, the unit that we have through the ATF is deprecating, meaning we have to get a completely new system and upgrade to that unit and go through maintenance agreements with the vendor as opposed to through ATF. And this arrangement is basically from 2027 onwards, that ATF will no longer be providing the bulk and primary of the service and maintenance and of the NIBIN program and equipment for us and other laboratories as well. So that is something that through grant funding, we'll see. This is a 5-year grant, $300,000 to last us 5 years, and we'll be looking forward to see what the future holds.
Thank you.
With that, is that going to be a consistent program across the country so that it's shared information, or are you going to have to find who to provide that?
Every laboratory that is currently enrolled in the NIBIN program with ATF is aware of this program because unless they want to forfeit their NIBIN program, they are going to have to apply for this. So the solicitation also lists every single laboratory that is on that list. If you're asking what happens after 5 years from now, I'm not sure.
Well, the NIBIN is run through federal government right now, you're saying, and then there's the new
They will still be
platform?
running. Yes.
Okay.
They will still be running it. They'll still be running the database. It's just the equipment and the maintenance of the equipment.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was a new database, but it's the
Nope.
same database,
Yes.
just new
The
equipment.
database is exactly the same. It is still managed, run, and overseen by the ATF, but the hardware and the maintenance of said hardware is no longer under the responsibility and purview of the ATF.
Understood. Thank you.
I have a couple technology-related questions. So you mentioned the importance of pattern recognition. I believe that was in reference to the firearm program. Has there been any conversation nationwide or within the county of artificial intelligence? It kind of feels like the most obvious use case, not as the end-all, be-all, but in terms of a high sensitivity screening tool, it seems like that's something that would excel at.
There's been quite a few discussions in the community with regards to the adoption or not adoption of AI in forensic science. There are definitely challenges and things to think about and overcome before we take that leap. Sure. One of the things off my cuff to consider is court testimony. The defendant has a right to face their accuser, and the implementation of AI, who would be going to testify in that? That's not an answer that I have. There are things that we could potentially utilize AI for that is more on the administrative element, but definitely not on the technical at this point in time. Validation is required. If any new technology and equipment are adopted, how would one validate a constantly changing, which AI is, a constantly changing platform, and ensure and trust the reliability of its output? Again, not a question that I have an answer for. So there are things that the community as a whole are thinking about, are considering, and are figuring out what we can do, if we can do anything about them.
Right. And secondly, you mentioned the transition to more of a paperless program. Maybe I watch too many movies, but what challenges does that bring from an IT standpoint in terms of data security and things like that?
I think with every improvement program, there are pros and cons. In our efforts to reduce our carbon footprint, we have gone paperless. The pros of that is that we've reduced our carbon footprint and we're able to access a lot of our software and databases from anywhere. I can access my quality management system from my phone. I can remote in from my laptop anywhere on the planet, almost, as long as IT gives me that permission, to get in and review a report and look at a case and many other things and access my folders. The con is that we are in a highly technological age with AI, with very intelligent people, with access to computers, computer coding, and things are being invented every single day that are beyond my ability to comprehend, and what used to be only sci-fi. What those challenges bring, unfortunately, only time will tell. But what I do know is that the data and the records that forensics has, where they're stored, they are as secure as they possibly can be.
And generally, these databases, they're not ours, correct? We're able to access state databases, federal, you reference FBI databases as well. So it's not as if the onus is entirely on us as a county to ensure their security.
There is definitely collaboration between the county IT and the different agencies that we collaborate with, such as the FBI for CODIS and MGI, the state for SAFUS, and ATF for NIBIN. Yes, there's constant communication to ensure the data is secure.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions, comments? So, yeah, I want to say when Legislator Kelly and I visited, we may have overstayed our welcome. I think we were there for like 3 hours. But it was awesome. We just enjoyed being there and just seeing what you guys do and that jump of, you know, what's needed out in the community from law enforcement agencies and others, and then what you guys are able to provide is amazing. It was great to see it. So thank you.
It's wonderful to have you guys there. And no, I am very long-winded. I love talking about what we do. I love showing people what we do and what we have. And, you know, it's important to show you what, for example, a comparison microscope looks like. You know, you're the folks that are authorizing and approving me to spend $100,000 on a piece of equipment that you have no idea what it looks like and what it does. I think it's important for you to see where that money is going to. What is this gas chromatogram that I am signing, you know, the dotted line for? Things like that. And I don't expect you to go Google everything and know what they do, but seeing it in the lab space, seeing the people. I think our staff really appreciate you guys coming through, because that, to them, I think demonstrates that you guys do care. You care about what they do, you care about the staff, and you care about the services that we have to offer. I would love to invite any one of you to come join me for a tour in 2027. We'll be open for tours again. Right now we're going to prepare for our assessment period and run into the holiday season. So 2027, I'll leave my business card here. Please take one as you wish, and feel free to contact me. That is my direct line and email. Any questions, set up a tour, and I'd be happy to show you around as long as you have 3 hours of time.
Thank you very much for coming today as well. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda, we have James Sullivan from Vital Statistics, Vital Records.
So again, I'm still Katie Anderson with the Health Department. Vital Statistics also, now for something kind of different, also sits under the Health Department, and James Sullivan has done a great job as our Vital Records Manager, and we'll be talking a little bit about that office.
Awesome, thank you, and thank you everybody for the invitation to talk about what we do.
Can you, your name and your title would be great.
Oh yeah, I'm James Sullivan, Vital Records Manager with Onondaga County Health Department. I started with the county in 2022 with Office of Vital Statistics and started working as manager in 2024. So I currently supervise a team of 5 amazing specialists in Office of Vital Statistics. And our role is we are tasked with everything to do with births and deaths in Onondaga County, birth and death certificates at least. Filing, correcting, issuing copies, maintaining our archives, both paper and electronic, in accordance with New York State public health law and regulations. Since births and deaths were consolidated under one county office in 1968, everything's gone through us. Our records go back to 1873 for the city of Syracuse. Our oldest records are some birth and death records from the town of Spafford in 1847. And it's fun going through the archives to see kind of the history of how the technology evolved. Like we started with handwritten like birth and death ledgers. onto like photo negative film transfers through to photocopies, and now finally we're working with scanned and indexed electronic databases as much as possible, which go back to 1962 for births and 2004 for deaths. So it's an ongoing process, just get everything scanned in and organized. As it stands now, birth certificates are still filed on paper, but hopefully not for much longer, with help from the statewide perinatal data system, which allows hospitals to fill these out electronically as much as possible, but it still requires an ink signature from the doctor or other attendant. Death certificates are thankfully filed completely electronically through the database application for vital events, or DAVE, kind of administered by the state, provided by LexisNexis. I ran some numbers from the past 5 years. We've issued 274,027 copies of birth and death records to the office. That averages out to 218 copies per day. Majority of these copies that go out are there are a lot of duplicate copies for funeral directors who are ordering like multiple death certificate copies for families for like insurance or closing out accounts, things like that. In that time, we have filed 30,750 new births and 28,501 new deaths, so we're still in the positive, which is great. And these all have like filing compliance times involved. So births, the hospitals have 5 business days to get the records to us, then we have 10 days to get them out to the parents. Deaths, between the doctor and the funeral director, they have 3 days to get these filed. And electronically, we get these, as long as it's during business hours, we are getting these permits out and signed within 30 minutes, as much as possible. So, and these numbers don't include like amended or corrected records, which kind of drives the number up much higher. Projects we've been working on. We recently upgraded our phone system to a service called EVA, or software called EVA from TIPCO. Those familiar with DSS know they're also using this auto attendant. It does have like AI implementation, but or AI kind of functionality in it, but it is helpful with, it's more of a conversational phone attendant. In the past, we would have, our like recordings, press 1 for births, 2 for deaths. This one, it's more conversational. It's a little scary in how creative it can get sometimes, but a lot of the process has been reining it in and then providing all of the information we would need for it to give like appropriate direction, and then knowing when, okay, a person must be involved with, a process or with answering a question. The big thing that comes out of this is the ability to sort, screen, review calls, pull analytics, and kind of see where are people. We can get a feel for what people need, but it's good to have that data to back it up. Like, what are people tending to ask about, or what are they getting tripped up on? Another project that I've really enjoyed working on has been sponsored birth certificates. It started out with the Onondaga County Department of Social Services, and then it's also expanded to the substance use initiatives with the health department to set up a process for those with financial need or really any need to get copies of their birth certificate at no cost to them. It's especially important now that the new ID regulations have gotten far stricter than they have in the past, but more on that later. We also have a looming upgrade to our online request form, which has been long overdue and we're very much looking forward to that. Challenges we faced. Last year's Real ID deadline was intense to work through as a department. We saw all of our record requests on average increase 40% as everybody realized, oh, I need the original certified copy of my birth certificate. The one that the original my parents gave me is not good enough anymore. Thankfully, that has slowed down. We're kind of back to more of a baseline level. Currently, we're dealing with a lot of dual citizenship requests, which, without getting too far into the weeds, it was Italy. Italy had a fairly permissive or kind of a, I'm not exactly sure how to describe it. More of a loose process involved in getting, or less strict process involved in getting a dual citizenship with Italy. You essentially had to prove that somebody in your lineage was an Italian citizen. They have recently restricted that by quite a bit. But right on cue, at the end of last year, Canada expanded its dual citizenship process, and now they're currently in the process of clawing that back, just a little bit, because I've heard stories coming out of Canada where people are showing up with, like, you know, typewritten genealogies from their grandfather saying it's a kind of a mess. But this creates problems because in New York State, if you need to get a certified copy of a birth certificate of somebody who is deceased, you need a court order. There is no other way around it. Death certificates are a bit easier, but it's a challenge sometimes. Like, we have to communicate this to the public. We can't, you know, we shouldn't and can't give legal advice in our capacity as local registrars, but we can, you know, provide guidance wherever it's appropriate. COVID continues to be, like, there's still reverberations of the challenges from COVID. New York State vital records especially was hit hard by this. They've gotten easier to get in touch with, especially because anything to do with, like, a court-ordered legal name change, paternity, correction reviews, we have record requests, if we have records which were sealed at some point, that all has to go through them. So thankfully, we were able to bounce back a lot quicker. We don't have to deal with, like, the 6 to 8 month backlogs that the state, I believe, is currently dealing with. But thankfully, that continues to improve. We're working on, you know, improving our documentation, kind of rebuilding and, you know, enhancing our knowledge base. We had a number of retirements in the past few years of people who've been working with the department for a very long time. So they're very missed, but it's also, you know, an opportunity to kind of get more of our knowledge written down and get people cross-trained. And the challenge too with our department, it's just the role our department plays. We're here to provide the service of both providing access to these records and also protecting the privacy of those who are listed on these records. So the two goals are kind of at odds sometimes. As I mentioned before, certain record requests require a court order. That includes, unfortunately, like a grandparent who is taking care of their grandchild. They can get a letter from DCFS that says they have custody, but until we get the court-ordered custody, we can't really do any business with them. There are ways for them to get around that, but again, it's an ongoing conversation and challenge. We do corrections to vital records, but they require very strict supporting documentation. So quick story, I had a gentleman come in last year who was 93 years old, found out when he was getting his real ID that his first name was spelled wrong on his original birth certificate and had never been corrected. So he did get it corrected, but he had to go to the diocese and have them pull his kindergarten admission record that shows his name spelled as it should have been, and we were able to work with that. But it is that challenging sometimes to get this documentation together, and there is not a lot of slack given by the federal government or DMV now because of the new federal ID guidelines. And I guess looking forward, the future of vital records, technology has a lot to do with, you know, how we kind of address things. We have, you know, the AI attendant, which it's helping us deal with, like, repetitive questions, but still there are a lot of, I guess, a lot of determinations on things that still require, like, a person to actually give a yes or no. It's been challenging, but also fun to learn kind of the limits or the kind of, like, gray areas that you run into with, like, public health law and regulations with these records. We're looking forward to, you know, New York State. Last I heard, it was next year they're hoping to implement an electronic birth registration system like they do with death certificates. We continue to work with county IT and county legal, you know, identifying ways to improve our efficiency and, you know, response times and response accuracy, you know, and ensuring compliance with public health law and changing standards. And, you know, looking outward, we're always looking for ways to, you know, work closer with other county departments that request records from us, both through the sponsored certificates program And then also just the routine government requests, court requests, and just helping to avoid cases where people end up having to come over here or the first or second floor, head back to Vital, back to court. You know, it can be kind of a bureaucratic nightmare sometimes. And then also working with hospitals for speedier, record delivery and accuracy of recording. Again, hopefully once this electronic database is implemented, that will speed things up. But again, it's, as with anything, it's a process. But again, thank you for having me. I look forward, if you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Questions, comments from...
These are going to sound like existential questions, and I don't mean them that way, but what happens when you're born and what happens when you die? I mean, how does one acquire a social security number? What is that whole process like on either end of the life cycle?
Sure. No, it's a great question. When you're born, at least the birth certificate filing process, Social Security varies because it can be, if you're born at a hospital, they'll usually handle that paperwork for you. They'll send it in separately, which is kind of another conversation. People, because these are filed separately, somebody can end up with their name spelled correctly in Social Security, incorrectly on the birth certificate. But yes, if you're born at home, it's signed by a midwife, whoever, or even just your parents. Born at a hospital, signed by a doctor or the attendant. The worksheet you fill out. All this information is verified. It comes through to us. We apply the signatures, or your signatures, to the records, and they're filed in theory forever on paper. Beyond that, the first copy's mailed out, free of charge. The death certificate process, a little bit trickier. I've had friends jokingly ask me how they can perhaps fake the process for tax reasons, and I had to let them know it's very, very difficult and don't do it. It's a collaboration between the medical attendant, either hospital or sometimes medical examiner's office, and a funeral director who always has to be involved, regardless of where you're being buried, cremated. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, my question is somewhat related to that in terms of who you are responsible for. Is it people who are born and die in Onondaga County, or people who live here and then are born and die? So if I were to go, nice catch. If I were to go somewhere else, right, would my records be here, or would it be where it happened?
Yeah, it's only where the event happens. It's if you're born in the county, if you pass away in the county, we have records for those. Again, with medical examiner, that can get tricky with funeral directors, where we have working with other counties. If somebody's brought over, they'll call us expecting a record and say, sorry, even though somebody from the county signed it, it is filed elsewhere. So it's wherever the event takes place.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Let's say for some reason I lose everything, be it a house fire or whatever it might be, and I literally have just my person. How would I get my birth certificate? Because let's say I'm trying to get my records back, and birth certificate seems to be one of the more obvious things to get. What does that look like? How do I do that?
Oh yeah. So there are a few ways around it. We can, we have leeway in the certain types of ID we can take. Like if you show up in person, we can take two forms of signature IDs, like signed Social Security card, signed debit or credit card, both together. Seeing you in person, it helps. If you lose truly everything, we kind of call it an ID of last resort. But if you get a sworn statement or a notarized statement attesting to your identity, you have somebody who can vouch for you, or if your parents are still around, if they can still order records, that's another way around it. But yeah, that's a lot of the challenge is just the creativity and working with people to find ways to both protect the records and then get them access if they don't have anything to provide.
Yeah. I just think about our homeless population, or like I said, people who lose everything. And okay.
Yeah, and that has been it's been great working with DSS and with substance use initiatives on these projects to kind of help alleviate that stress, because it's we hear it every day. It's, well, you need a birth certificate to get an ID. You need an ID to get a birth certificate. It can be a loop. It doesn't have to be. So we try to figure that out.
Okay, great.
I was
was going to say
Yes.
just one thing. One, thanks for having us today, and to acknowledge and thank James and Renee for coming. And just to acknowledge that if you think about typical departments of public health, and they're all different across the state, but Center for Forensics Lab, Vital Statistics, they don't always fall under core public health, but they link so well, and a lot of that is thanks to their leadership. So as you've heard, they have high technical expertise. They have a really important job that they do very well, but I really appreciate for both of them the way that they partner with us as part of us to work with the Substance Use Initiative team, to work with us so we can learn from what you're identifying in the toxicology lab about emerging drugs, and your innovation is just exceptional. So we're really fortunate to have you as part of the health department, both of you.
Awesome. Does anyone else have anything? So the agenda does show medical examiner offices. That was not intended to be on there. It's just not a good time for them to come. But if anyone doesn't have anything else, that was the last item on our agenda. I just want to comment to Dr. Anderson. We have had her and multiple people in her department here all year, exposing us to the department, what they're doing. I really appreciated that. I want to say your team is phenomenal. Everybody that you have brought up here, I've been impressed by the work that they're doing, how they're able to do it, just the impact that they're having on our community. So it makes us, it makes me, I know anyways, feel so much better knowing, that we have good teams out there doing the work that we need done. So it's great to see that. And having these presentations has helped us to understand that, I think. And so I just want to thank you for all of your time. I know you've been here a lot, so I want to thank you for that. It's appreciated.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I thank you for the opportunity to shine a light on their work, because it's really important and they do it really well. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. With no other items on the agenda, can I get a motion to adjourn? Legislator Burtis, and seconded by Legislator Denton. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all for coming today. Appreciate it. Yeah, I wanted to talk to you. Excuse me. Not about my cough. Just having conversations with people lately. It's not top secret. And having conversations with people. With internal and specifically, I had a conversation with somebody, and they were in a relationship. They had a child with somebody that they were not in a relationship with. And the mother had custody, and the mom really struggled with postpartum stuff. Just functioning after having a child. And we talk about
mine next year.
Wow.
Me too.
Do we then also think about it for after that child is born? Okay, thank you. I didn't know how to say that. What does that look like? How do we monitor? How do we gauge that? How do we make sure that that's going well?
That's a big gap. And in general, I would say that whole process is difficult for women to navigate. It's difficult for them to get access to doctor's appointments, and then afterwards, there's not